In today's session, we will discuss some of the, as my panelists join, discuss some of the major reforms to the Irish private pensions under the IORP II directive, which will fully come into effect in April 2026. These changes could have serious implications for Irish expats, potentially triggering exit taxes of up to 50% on certain pension transfers or restructurings. So today, to talk about that, we will break it down. What's changing, who's affected, and how do you protect your pension wealth before it's too late? So if you have any questions during the session, you see there's a chat section to the right. Just pop them in there, and we'll either get to them during the session or somebody from Portugal Pathways will get back to you afterwards. And you can actually schedule a free discovery call if after today you want to investigate more. So now I have with me, thankfully, because I'm not an expert in this particular field, I have two that are. So I am joined today by Chris Marson. So he's an IFA with Portugal Pathways and is got all the inside and up and down of what you should be doing as an expat in Portugal setup. And Suzanne Cashin is a financial planning professional at RBC Brewin Dolphin in Ireland, who's our deep expert on the subject. So welcome everybody to the seminar. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to start with you, Suzanne, if I can. What is the significance of April 2026 for people who hold Irish pensions, and why is this deadline creating so much concern?
Great question, Paul, and thanks for having me here today. I've been boring people talking about IORPS and its consequences for the last 5 years. I suppose to give a little bit of background, Ireland and the UK would have been outliers in terms of pension structures to our other European countries. So in countries like France or Germany, it'd be very common to have a very large master trust. So, for example, an engineering master trust, and that scheme could have 500 to 1 million people in it. So very large schemes that kind of cover industry sectors. In the UK and in Ireland, we tend to like to float our own boat. So traditionally, owner directors or senior execs would have set up what we call one-member pension schemes. They were typically established under trust or under letter of exchange. So the IORPS II legislation was brought in really to bring in tighter investment restrictions on European pension funds in those very large schemes. And obviously Brexit has meant that the UK schemes are unaffected by it, but in Ireland, the Pensions Authority chose to adopt it. And it means that the bar of regulation for a one-member scheme puts too much onerous responsibility on trustees going forward, which typically were either individual trustees or were the body corporate, so the ABC Limited Company. And as a result of that, all of these schemes have to be wound up by April 26 and transferred to a new structure. The challenge and issue that I'd like to talk about today is what structure you go into and whether that structure will work for you if you're planning to retire to Portugal, Paul.
Okay, good. So I guess the first thing, because I'm a kind of a hurler on the ditch on this subject, rather than the expert that you are. So the first thing is really the message that you got to change if you're affected by the directive change, because the changes are just too onerous to consider. So you're particularly talking today about the people who are involved in the single member pension schemes. So
absolutely.
If you're in one, you got to get out of it. That's basically the headline, is it, for what we're doing?
The big concern is that the life company or the trustee that currently provides the administrative duties or trustee duties to your scheme do not want to fall foul of that legislation, because that could bring in fines or other issues for them. So if you're not engaging, you may end up being moved stealth-wise into a structure where your provider has reached out to you, you haven't engaged, and they just move you bulk into it. And then that structure doesn't work for your planned retirement in Portugal.
Okay, all right. So big red light flashing to take action, do something before someone does something to you, kind of heading. Chris, can I bring you in, please? You're an independent financial advisor, and you've obviously have a lot of contact with the Irish expats in Portugal. What's the mood? What are people doing, and what actions are people taking that you've been witnessing?
Good afternoon, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for that, Paul. Well, I mean, it's a really good question, actually, because what action are they taking? I think lots of people, the action is just omission. When you move to Portugal, your pension kind of gets left behind. It's the part of your planning that maybe hasn't taken as big a part of what you need as you would hope for. You maybe sold your business, you've moved down here, you've got NHR, or you've come on a different visa. But now I think what's motivating people at the moment is definitely the deadline of April 2026. If you don't do something, you'll be put into a structure that you don't have control over, that you haven't decided what you want to do. And I think what we're finding is people are they've enjoyed the life in Portugal. Portugal's a lovely life, the sunshine, the bars, the culture, the restaurants. But actually now what they're realizing is I've got a few 100,000, maybe a little bit more in my pension, and actually I need to do something with it. It's in Ireland, I'm in Portugal. Actually what I need to do is make it work together. And as you were saying earlier, and as Suzanne so eloquently put it, I think the problems that could beset you if you don't make a choice will really impact the finances. You've done the right thing, you've saved for a pension, but actually you could end up losing half of it if you're moving out, if you're trying to take it when you're a resident in Portugal. So it's kind of something, the motivation is just becomes quicker the closer we get to the deadline. I think people have kind of been ignoring it up till now because that's the easy thing to do. But I think now they are definitely being motivated, and we are seeing that there is a definite mood amongst Irish people. They are talking about it, and you guys as Irish people know, when Irish people talk, lots of people end up coming to talk to you.
All right, but you're not qualified to talk about how we talk.
Definitely not.
Chris, what that's what people are talking about. What are they doing? What are you advising people to do?
So at the moment, everyone's in a different situation, and we, to get into specifics here would be quite hard. But effectively, what we need to be doing is looking at what the pension that they have, making sure that it's right for them to move. There are people there that it's not right to move, but if it is right, we would then look to move them outside of Ireland into probably a Malta structure, which would then give them much more flexibility and options to do things in the future, or even straight away. It's, if you're under NHR in Portugal, you're either taxed at 0 or 10% on your pensions. So it makes sense to take them out of your pension as at that tax rate, because that's a very, very good tax rate.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is there may be a specific problem that you're dealing with here, but a wider consideration of what you should be doing in terms of financial planning for either whether you're moving to Portugal, are in Portugal, or for that matter, thinking of moving somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? What are you looking to do? If you're in Portugal, we are seeing people and we are moving people's pensions as we speak. If you are looking to move to Portugal, well, you still have to do something, because if you don't do something now, come April 2026, you'll probably be in a structure where you can't move it. And if you are thinking of moving anywhere around Europe or the world, again, if you leave it in Ireland, possibility is that you will have some penal taxes. So the real thing, I guess, what we're saying today is, let's talk. Let's talk, and let's sit down and just spend 15 minutes, and it will be a very simple process. It's a simple 15-minute conversation, but we will then be able to work out where we go. It's a flow diagram situation, yes, no, and you'll end up somewhere where we think you need to be.
Okay, great. Let me be devil's advocate, and there's a little bit here where I'm asking a question, but it might be closer to my actual mindset than I'll ever let on. What happens if I just leave it where it is? I know you mentioned this, Suzanne, but there's always people are talking about it. It's a lot of talk. It'll be fine. I've set it up. it's fine. I'll leave it. I won't bother doing anything with it. Or for that matter, if you're going to be a little bit more sophisticated, I've heard about it, so I'm going to call the person who helped me set up my pension, my local person, and say, what should we do? So in those kind of bare minimum or do nothing reactions, Suzanne, talk sense into me.
Okay, so I'm sure if you looked up the word procrastination in the Oxford Dictionary, it would have equals Irish person, okay? So we love to put things on the long finger and leave things till the last moment. 20 years ago, we had a very successful savings plan, the SSIA, and it walks and talks like an ISA. 75% of them were signed up on the last Saturday. So this was like free money from the government, and everybody left it till the last Saturday. Unfortunately, with pensions, moving a pension, which Chris has put very well, takes time. And, you've got to get your new pension structure set up. You've got to also review your existing one. You've got to engage your existing advisor. And all of those people won't all be available at the same time. So you need to give yourself time to do this. Just ignoring it is absolutely the wrong thing to do in this situation. And I know, as Chris said, lots of people move to Portugal, maybe because they've sold their business, for other tax considerations, and they might kind of have put the pension on the long finger or forgotten about it, which, is not the right thing to do in this scenario. Your local advisor is authorized, like myself, to advise you in the local jurisdiction, but he cannot advise you on the suitability or the tax consequences of moving abroad. And dare I say it, he's probably conflicted because he's not able to set up a new pension structure for you abroad. So he's going to probably offer you a myriad of solutions that work well if you're retiring in Ireland, but he's not going to be able to provide this bespoke solutions that the likes of Chris and that can if you are actually living abroad. And the problem is that if you end up moving into one of those structures, some of them can travel well and can be advised upon by Chris and his team, and they can move them to much more suitable structures. But some of them don't travel well, and you could just end up with a long-term disadvantage from just apathy or just ignoring it. So I would really encourage people to go and have a chat with someone like Chris and his colleagues and get the information. And if you decide that doesn't work for you, that's fine. But the key thing here is to arm yourself with the information. And I would say, I refer to this as the golf club advice, go and speak to a professional. Don't listen to your friend who tells you, well, I did this with mine, or your man down the road. This is one of the occasions when the DIY approach will not work and could actually cost you.
Okay, that kind of prompts a question from me, Chris. If people are to talk to someone like yourself who's independent, can they bring their advisor? Can they point you with their current advisor? Can you work with, like, if I've got a pension and I really, my man did it for me, my woman did it for me, and I don't know much about it, that somebody else did it for me, I got on with running the business, the pension was taken care of me, I don't want to go into it, I don't want to learn about it. So can I point my advisor to you, and can you work with an Irish advisor in that environment, or do you have to work independently?
No, we would happily, we work with existing advisors all the time. I mean, it's really important that we understand the motivation for the pension in the first place. It's important we understand what's going forward. It's also important for the client that what they get is properly independent advice that's regulated in the jurisdiction that they're in. And if the right move is to move it outside of Ireland into another jurisdiction, we'll definitely work with your current advisor to see how we can make that the best, make that happen in the best way possible for everybody. Because we recognise people have got long-standing relationships. We have long-standing relationships with lots of our clients, and we work with advisors in the UK, with advisors in Ireland, advisors in France. When people are moving to Portugal, we're their Portugal advisor. So we try and we try and make sure that we keep people informed and in it, and very often your local advisor can help get the information that we need from the pension companies. That sometimes is a sticking block, and we found that local advisors are very useful in helping there. And we'll have happy. The answer is yes, we'll happily work with anyone and do.
That's super. That's a really good point that I hadn't considered, and I thought about this for a bit. That, of course, my local person is only approved to talk to me about the local situation, and I'm probably one of those people who've, like lots of Irish people, have travelled, and I've got pensions in different jurisdictions and stuff. So I need actually quite a few advisors to talk to you, Chris, about about what I do with the UK pension, what I do with the Irish pension, for instance, because I'm sure there'll be people listening to the seminar who will have pensions in different countries, and probably like me will just have had taken some base advice on it of just how to use it. But this seems to be, if you're in one of these kind of pensions, quite a serious moment for you to probably wake up and say, this isn't going to work out. You've got to take control of this. So is there anything like, how do I spot that I'm gone down the wrong DIY? Is there any kind of mistakes that you're spotting, Chris, that people are making? Is there kind of patterns of behavior of either the DIYers or somebody else who are, look like they're doing something about it, but they're actually probably going about it the wrong way? What's the warning signals?
I think Suzanne hit on it actually. The kind of golf club advice. My friend's done this, so I'll do the same. Everyone is different. As you mentioned, some people will have UK pensions, some people might have American savings, some people have Irish pensions. All of these things. Here it's the Irish. It's your actual Irish pension that you need to talk about and do and act on. But the big mistake is always not taking professional advice, because sometimes, if we sit in front of people and they've done the right thing, that's great. And you've got professional advice to say you've done the right thing. If we sit in front of you and go, well, let's stop now. Let's hold what we're doing. Let's just think about it. Are you sure this is where you want to end up? Are you sure this is the right for you? Because if you do that, then this will happen. It's a free 15-minute call to start with, and then if we get involved in the process, I would much rather travel to meet someone down in Villamura and sit in there, have a cup of coffee with them and say, right, okay, please don't do that. Whether you do it with us or not, or we take it forward, just don't do what you're doing that the guy down the golf club or the lady down the golf club said to you, because you're in a different position to them. And that's the really key bit. Everybody is different. There's a generality, which is why we can run a webinar, but each individual is different. How long do you want to stay in Portugal? Where do you want to move after Portugal? Do you want to go back to Ireland? All of these things need to be looked at. And you need to know, we're an advisor that can cover both, Ireland and Portugal. We can cover UK and Portugal, and we can work with any advisors that you have in the meantime, as I said.
Okay. So I should remind people that I see that popped up on the screen. I'm sure it is for everybody, that just the method by which to get the free 15-minute no obligation phone call is just to hit the contact button, and the Portugal Pathways people who are listening in the background will pick up on any of those requests and schedule you in. So you've got some support on that. So let's just kind of, if in my mind, I think we're kind of clear that this is do something. If you're in this situation, it'll be done to you if you don't help yourself. So you will be very sorry if that is the outcome. Now let's talk about timing then, because we're all have got different ambitions. We're all also at different stages in our career. Some are already in Portugal, that you can tell them because they're more tan than the rest of us. Some of them are heading that way. Some of us, have an option whether we, would be sitting on whether I could actually retire my pension now, for instance. Why could I do something like that? So can you, Suzanne, can you talk a little bit to the timing of where you are in your pension kind of drawdown, etc.?
Sure. So if you are retired to Portugal, and I mean that you've retired, but you haven't actually retired your pension structure yet, you should move that pension before you retire it. Because if you retire the pension in Ireland, then you'll be locked into the Irish scenario. And typical options are you can get 25% of your fund as a lump sum. The balance you can either buy the old-fashioned annuity, which most people don't want to do because that involves permanent capital surrender of your pension fund. And if you live to 100, you beat the actuary. If you die early, well, the actuary and the life company win. So most people in Ireland have been doing our version of pensions freedom, which has been around since 1999. And that's where the 75% rolls into a product called an approved retirement fund, or an ARF. And the issue with ARFs is they are not a pension as far as Irish Revenue are concerned. They're an individual investment that benefits from tax-free growth post-retirement, but any income you draw out of it is taxed in Ireland, and it's subject to PRSI if you're under 68, to USC, and to PAYE. If you have one of them and you're tax resident in Portugal, the QFM, who's the provider of the ARF box, is legally obliged to deduct all those taxes from your distribution every year. You have to take a mandatory amount out every year. You're then going to have to do a manual tax return to Irish Revenue to get back your money. There's quite a complex calculation that you've got to submit. And then they may give you back the PAYE, but in some instances you can't get back the USC, which is kind of a stealth tax. And if it's a very large pension pot with a large drawdown, because you've got to take between 4 and 6% a year of the gross value, depending on your age, then you may not be able to recover that USC. And once it's in this ARF, which is a unique Irish product, it can't travel. So it does not travel anywhere. So if you had 400,000 in your ARF, and you say, well, look, I can't be coping with this tax return every year in Ireland, I'm just going to cash it all in and move it to Portugal, you're going to lose half of it at the border, and you will not recover that probably inevitably, even if you're declaring it in Portugal. So really, really important that if you're talking to your local advisor and he's saying, oh, look, why would you go to the hassle of moving it abroad? Why don't you just collapse it now? That actually can create a disadvantage for you as well, Paul. So the whole key here is to talk and to get as much advice as you can before you go down any particular route. Because again, as I said, it could be the wrong option for you. And once you're there, you're kind of landlocked.
Wow. Okay. So I guess that kind of complicates it as well, because depending on your timing, you now kind of consider, before, I guess it was a little bit, I can go to Portugal and I can draw it all down. But if you're in one of these pensions, you really do have to deal with this. Is this like one of these situations where you're forced to change it, and okay, you dodge the fees or the taxes at the border, but you pay heftily in fees? So can you give the listeners some idea of what the fee structures are around moving the pension?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is more Chris's area of expertise, but typically the fees on moving to a new structure are, in my experience, no more expensive than what you're probably already paying in your Irish structure. You're probably already paying a trustee fee, a pension administration fee, and you're probably paying a management fee. And those fees will all apply to whatever structure you move it to. But inevitably, I haven't seen any examples where people end up paying more. The issue is that if you get put into a product now in Ireland where an advisor has taken an upfront fee, then when you go to actually move it, assuming the pension is suitable, you may actually suffer an exit penalty or a transfer penalty on the way out. So that's why getting your boxes in a row now and talking to somebody like Chris and the team about new structures that you can build abroad, and then actually nearly reverse engineering it, is the right thing to do at the moment, Paul.
Can I just do a sound check? Can you hear me, guys? Can you nod if you can hear me?
Yeah.
I've lost my volume to you guys. So if I could, because I'm going to pass a question on to you, Chris, and I'll leave and I'll pop back in and see where, I'll ask the expert. I'll pop off. And if you could pick up on just what you're seeing on the ground in Portugal for now, and I'll see if I can regain my audio, which I don't have on this side.
No problem at all, Paul. Well, what we're seeing on the ground in Portugal is people being concerned. There's been press comment around this. We're running webinars on this for a reason. As Suzanne said, everyone's had years to do this, but we all enjoy the lifestyle and want to do other things. But now this has become a lot more pressing. So what are we seeing? We're seeing business people that have had companies, maybe they still run the companies, but from Portugal. They use their residency status in Portugal to make sure that they take their money tax efficiently. But the pension has kind of taken a bit of a back seat. And now it's kind of moves right to the front of their thinking. And what they need to be doing with us is sitting down, putting a plan in place. You know, these things don't happen overnight. We have to contact pension companies. We have to make sure that it's the right thing. We have to get letters of recommendation. You know, these things will take 2, maybe 2.5, 3 months to happen. So, you know, with an April 2026 deadline, we're looking at things needing to happen by January, I would guess, to really try and get this together. So we are seeing I wouldn't say it's a flood at the moment, but it's definitely a stream. You know, we are seeing many Irish people asking us, and generally that's because, you know, people like Suzanne, people like Portugal Pathways have been raising the profile of this issue, because it's a very serious issue for Irish people. And if Irish people don't, you know, if Irish people don't look at this and don't do anything, you will end up in a place that is just not as beneficial. Now, it seems to me, you know, I would say I know, but, you know, click the contact us button, actually make use of the 15 minutes, 20 minutes that we can sit down, talk to you. And if we say, do you know what, you're fine, that's great. If we say, let's take things further, that's great. If we say, let's book another meeting with your advisor, then that's good as well. But I do passionately believe that what's happening on the ground is there as a groundswell. And I said it earlier as a joke, I know, but Irish people talk to other Irish people. You know, that is definitely happening. You know, we're based down in Kinstalago, and we are seeing many people talking to us, wanting to come along, wanting to discuss this. So, you know, on the ground, people are definitely aware of this. And, you know, the fact we've got so many people on this webinar, you know, I think that's a sign that more and more people are recognizing that, you know what, let's look at this. Because if I do nothing, which is an option, if I do nothing and I don't click the contact us button, then, you know, people, you know, then I will just end up in a place that I will end up in a place that the Irish government will.
Over you. I've lost your audio. I'm talking to the experts behind the scene. So I'm gonna pop out of the link and come back in and see if I can reestablish some audio. I know, because you from your expressions you can hear me, and I do apologize for that. We're working furiously in the background to try and fix it. And if I could hand hosting to you, Chris, in terms of the Q&As and stuff, that because there's stuff coming in on the chats, and hopefully I'll return with better tech. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah. I suppose one of the things we need to talk about, Suzanne, is the bit around, you know, what happens if they want to come back? You know, what happens if they move their pension abroad and then they want to go back to Ireland or to the UK? You know, what are the kind of disadvantages or implications of them doing that? Because that's something that our clients always ask about.
Yeah. Really good question, Chris. And the good news is that there isn't actually any disadvantage, because Ireland treats the drawdown of foreign pension funds in exactly the same manner as it does Irish ones. So if you have your pension fund in Malta, which appears to normally be the most suitable jurisdiction to move to, because Malta has a very flexible pension drawdown regime, and it works very well with the Portuguese tax authorities and the 0 or the 10% tax scheme that people may be availing of in the Algarve or in Portugal. But if you move it abroad and then you go to draw it down, you can declare your lump sum in Ireland in exactly the same way as you would have, and the same tax treatment will apply to it. So you'll be just declaring it on your tax return as drawdown of a foreign pension lump sum, and it will be treated in exactly the same way as it would have been if you took it from an Irish pension scheme, with the first 200,000 being tax-free, assuming that your fund is 800 grand, and anything above that first 200,000 of your 25% then is taxed at 20% PAYE in Ireland, but not subject to USC or PRSI. So no different to drawing down from your pension in Dublin than to drawing down from your pension in Malta. Debt treatment is the same, and you can do flexible drawdown in Malta, And when any of those funds that you remit to Ireland are then taxed accordingly, assuming you're back tax resident in Ireland. So there is no disadvantage to doing this, but there is probably a perceived disadvantage to leaving it in Ireland if it ends up in a structure that you can't move abroad or can't access in a tax efficient manner without being subject to Irish taxes and possibly Portuguese as well.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have to say, we find with our clients exactly that. You know, one of the things is always about what if, because health issues come up, family issues come up. You know, everyone that moves abroad, you know, whether they're Americans, whether they're UK, whether they're Irish, you know, there's always a possibility that they will go back.
Yeah.
I have to say, we're finding with our clients that a lot more are staying. You know, I think the sunshine and the culture helps them.
I was going to say,
that's nice.
I'm looking out the window here today, and I can tell you would not be coming back here today. It's cold, wet, and windy. Even the dog won't go out the back door. So definitely, I don't know how you'd go back today now based on the weather here.
Yeah. So maybe I should run through just kind of the process. You know, what do people need to be doing before the end of this year to kind of stay ahead of the deadline? Because I do think that you know, for people in this position, you know, it is really a matter of, you know, talking with an advisor. You know, talking with your, if you're in Ireland, talk with your Irish advisor, and then have a meeting with us. If you're in Portugal, please feel free to take advantage. You know, click the contact us, but just set the meeting up. It's a very simple thing. We're nice people. We'll just talk to you about the issues you may have. I think you know, if you can get as much detail as possible on the pensions you hold in Ireland, that would be really helpful to get together, so that when we have the meeting or when we decide what we need to do with you, you know roughly how much it is, you know who it's with. You know, these are all things we would need to know to go forward and go ahead with some kind of transfer for you. But it's just important for you to know as well. You know, whether you decide to move the pension or not. You know, it's worth writing to your pension provider and saying, can you give me, you know, discharge forms? Can you give me a transfer value? So then you know whether you're transferring €1, €10, or €100. And you know, let's hope that you've done well and the investments have done well, and you're transferring hundreds of euros. But you know, that's the type of thing is worth looking at. I think, you know, but it really is an act now and put a plan in place, because you know what we are seeing is, as ever in these situations, as people leave it later, that means pension providers are inundated with more requests. So the sooner you get your request in, the sooner we can get the money transferred, and the sooner you can kind of be on the other side of the tax schemes. Is that what you're finding, Suzanne, as well?
Yeah, and I think I shared with you, Chris, there was, as of September, about 90,000 of these pension products that need to be wound up. And basically, you know, advisors may just be snowed under, and trustees. So, and we've seen a lot of our clients kind of getting pressure on people to make decisions. I think an important differentiator to mention to people as well is that you don't have to close down your existing scheme and move to another Irish pension. If you're living abroad, then there is the option to close down that existing pension and move it straight abroad. And that's very important, because the product you might end up in may not travel as well. So if you're getting pressurized to go into a product, it's really important to talk to someone like yourself, Chris, and get that advice, because it is possible for your one-member scheme to be instructed that under European pensions freedom, you're moving your pension abroad, and that your plan is to actually move it to your new revenue-approved pension in Malta. So you can avoid that new product step if that's going to disadvantage you. And local advisors may or may not be aware of that, because they may not be familiar with that nuance, but that is an important thing for people to be aware of. And look, at least if you've got all the information, and you can then make an informed decision. But if you kind of stay in the vacuum, it's very likely, and you know, Chris, we've had long discussions as financial planners for more years than we care to remember. Like the vacuum and the head in the sand does not work. It very rarely produces a good outcome. And just having that advice, and I suppose what I'd say as well is your job and my job is to demystify this whole area. So it is quite complex. The language around it can be complex. You might be getting letters that, you know, you find are difficult to decipher because they're speaking about all those anagrams, IORP II, ARFs, EPPs, PRSAs, pensions. Like our job is to guide you through that and demystify that and actually make the journey quite streamlined and less anxious for you to get to the right end result.
Great stuff. Okay. So I guess from here, it's kind of looking at what kind of document. I mentioned before what kind of documentation Irish expats should be getting together. But what kind of documents would you be recommending that they got together? Would it be something similar?
So I would say at the moment that people are getting letters from. So most of the pension schemes in Ireland are run through the life companies. So they may, and this is the other thing, those letters may well be going to their Irish address if they haven't updated their address to their Portugal address. And actually, one of the big challenges that the life companies have identified is that where people have moved on and not updated their address. So those letters could be going into the ether and not, you know, you might be taking no action on it. So, you know, you want to ask them for your current options, scheme wind-up options, and they will list out various options. It won't call out an overseas transfer, but we know under European pensions freedom legislation that's possible. Again, a lot of the companies have portals, so you might be able to go onto the portal and request those documents online. You also want to get a look at a current value, and it's also a good time to go and do a health check on it, because Chris, we've spoken about this before. In a lot of cases, when we do these deep dive under the bonnets for people, we find out that the investment solutions or funds they're in are actually not suitable. So they might be in a very low risk strategy that doesn't suit, you know, mapping towards an annuity purchase. So it could be in bonds and cash. So it's a good time to actually do a full health check on the full pension fund and make sure that it's fit for purpose.
Great stuff. So maybe we should get into some chat questions. I think that's probably a good idea while Paul's trying again what to do, but let's see how it goes. I think let's have one from Patrick. Can you answer this one, Suzanne?
Sure.
I think he says, I'm currently under the NHR regime. If my Irish pension is restructured under IORP II, will it still be taxed at 10% in Portugal?
So it depends on what product you end up into. So that's why you want to get to them before they restructure it. If your pension is transferred to the master trust, then that can still move abroad. But if you end up in a structure where you have to draw your benefits from Ireland, then we're back to the scenario I outlined earlier, where you're going to have to do an Irish tax return, claim back the Irish PAYE, and basically then declare it in Portugal as well. So the easiest example I can give you is if you had €1 million in your pension fund and you retire it in Ireland, you're going to get 25% of that as a lump sum. And the 750, you're either doing capital surrender to buy an annuity or it's going into one of these approved retirement funds. You will pay PAYE, USC and PRSI on that pot of money, on that ARF each year as you draw down your income drawdown. If you lift your €1 million out of Ireland into a QROPS in Malta, obviously this is all subject to your tax advisor and your international advice from someone like yourself, Chris. You can get your 25% lump sum. There's no cap on that. You can, with no tax at all on it. And the 750 you can draw down under the flexible drawdown regime and declare it at the 10%. So you're probably emptying your 1 million out with 100 grand of Portuguese tax versus possibly losing, 40% of it under the Irish regime and having to do that tax return every year. That's going to cost you. You're going to have someone to do the calculations. And as I said, we've seen clients who can get back the PAYE, but in a lot of instances, it's a big fight with revenue. And Chris, you'll be familiar with HRMC in the UK. The tax authorities just don't like giving back money once they have it,
Yeah, I think one of the things we see with our clients actually is and I use this phrase a lot. It's kind of being able to sleep at night. You want the simple solution that enables you to sleep at night. It's regulatory correct. It does the job. It does what you need to do. But you don't have to worry about, are we going to get that tax back? Because once you give it to a government, you know that it's harder to come back, to get it back off them. And we definitely do see, it's our role as financial planners is to take away people's problems. And I think if we can get to people earlier, the earlier we can get to you guys, book your call, but the earlier we can get to you, the better the outcomes will be. At least then you will know you've got a good outcome and you will sleep better at night. It's just a simple, it's a simple option. There was one there from Siobhan as well, I think, who asked about moving the pension into a QROPS or other overseas structure before 2026 without triggering Irish tax.
No,
I mean,
it shouldn't if it's in a one-member scheme, or if it's moved into a master trust. If it's been moved into a PRSA, then it does get a bit more complex. There are some solutions, I believe, out there which would be more up to the Maltese experts, but you want to ideally get it into the QROPS before it moves from its existing box. So we know from the last 10 to 15 years that one-member schemes or executive pension plans travel very well, but most of the other structures don't travel that well and might require you moving from product A to product B to product C, and the clock is ticking in the background. So, if you're living abroad, to all sense of minds, the QROPS via Malta does appear, depending on your tax advisor and your local advisor in Portugal's advice, seems to be the best option for flexible drawdown, Chris.
Okay, and one of the questions I'd like to ask, actually, just you said 90,000, was that right? 90,000 schemes haven't been.
Yeah, so there wasn't.
How on earth is that going to be done by April? I mean, I'd love to do the maths on that quickly about how many that is a week.
Yeah, so
it's over 1,000 a week.
Yeah, the Pensions Authority has acknowledged that they're probably not going to hit that deadline. But I think the problem you have is that trustees are feeling the pressure because this IORP II legislation puts very onerous investment regulations and responsibilities on them in relation to the scheme and the investment it holds. So they're really putting the pressure on their clients to get those schemes moved because they don't want to fall foul of the regulator, and they just don't want to be trustees anymore. They want to get rid of these schemes, and the life companies are, scrambling to get as many of these done as they can. So, you need to just get ahead of the curve there. And what you don't want is for a life company to be in April saying, right, we're just doing a bulk transfer of all these to product ABC, and then find that it can't move abroad and you're stuck retiring in Ireland with the ARF. And I would just point out as well, people often mention what's called a PAYE exclusion order. A PAYE exclusion order, Chris, works like an NI order in the UK. So it allows for an annuity to be paid gross to a person living abroad. An ARF is not possible to get a PAYE exclusion order on it because revenue don't recognise it as an annuity or a pension. So you may get people going, who maybe retired on a DB pension, and they're going, well, I have a PAYE exclusion order, so you'll be able to get one of them. You can't get them for ARFs.
So that sounds like a perfect golf club conversation to me, Suzanne, when two people are in totally different places,
yes,
but they are both right. So that sounds along there. An interesting one I've just picked up from John on the chat. I don't know if you see it. It says, Davey have written to me to say they will charge €1,000 per month from the 1st of Jan. Is this even legal? It's before the deadline. Clearly, John's not a happy guy, but.
So what they're trying to do is incentivize people to get out. So I have seen other people who have got their renewal notices in from their pension trustee, and their fees have gone from maybe $5,000 a year to $15,000 a year. And the trustee has discretion depending on what fee charge you signed up for. Like, that is showing you now what I'm saying here. These guys do not want to be trustees of your scheme anymore. So they're going to make it financially painful and prohibitive to get you out of that structure and into one where they're not subject to these onerous responsibilities or open to being sued by a regulator.
So all I can say, John, is if you haven't done it yet, get in touch, because we can sit down and hopefully before the 1st of Jan, we'll be saving you €1,000 a month somehow. Let's have a look, see if there are any other questions that I've missed. I think we've covered about taking partial withdrawals or lump sums. Is there any benefit to that, Suzanne?
Don't take anything out of it before you leave. So that's really, really important, because once you have done what we call the crystallization event, which is where you've dipped your hand in, the goose is cooked for you, you're stuck in Ireland. Okay, so what you want to do is delay any of that. I mean, Chris, you see this all the time where people lift up their pot, move it to Malta, and then immediately retire it, and there's no problem at all. There's no legislative impede there to you doing that. But the important thing is not to crystallize before you move, because once you've dipped your hand in, you're retired, you've crystallized the scheme, and the boat has sailed.
So can I say, please, to everybody on this webinar, and there are lots of you on here, please listen to that piece of advice from Suzanne. That's the one piece of advice that's worth taking. Do not crystallize now. Whatever anybody says to you, please do not do that yet without working out whether it's the right thing for you to do. I think that's that. So I think we've covered a lot of the questions, and we're getting kind of to 50 odd minutes or so. So I think maybe it's time to wrap this one up, Suzanne, and maybe kind of one final piece of advice we can give them each. Do you want to go first? Would that be the kind of key tax or compliance advice that you want to keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, definitely take up the offer of the advice, and nobody's going to strong arm you into doing anything. You're just going to get information, and information is power. But at least if you have that information, and I would also say push back with your local advice. If they're telling you you can't move, or, they're putting impediments in your way, like, challenge that advice back, and whatever you've got in writing, come and talk to someone like Chris or the team and get them to sense check it to make sure. I'm not implying in any way that any advisor would be giving you the wrong advice, but they may just not have the technical knowledge or expertise to realize that there are a whole world of options there via Malta and other structures. And, I cannot, and please don't do the DIY advice, because as I said, I'm 30 years doing this job. It rarely, if ever, produces a positive outcome.
No, I totally agree. And my takeaway, and my, I would leave with people to look at, is to say, one, always make sure your technology works and that the host stays in the meeting, because that puts a lot of pressure on the rest of us. But we're here, so I hope that we've entertained you and informed you. But my piece of advice would definitely be, take advice wherever you get it from. Take advice, but make it professional advice. Make it advice you can trust. Make it simple and easy advice. This shouldn't be complicated. This is a simple area for you. It gets much more complicated because that's what that's where it is down the line. But actually, at the moment, your first choice is: do I have an issue? Do I need to do something? Do I want to do something? And then from there, we'll pick those up. And I promise you, it is a 15-minute call that just makes it all very simple and straightforward. And then when we go from there, we'll come and see you, and we'll sit down with you, and we'll talk to you about the much more nuanced parts of this that we need. Because as with anything, it's not as easy as it sounds. But within 2 months, we can take away the problems that you have. You've done what you need to do, and you're not worried about losing half of your pension in Ireland. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening to us, because we have gone on a bit. But I'd like to thank Suzanne. I'd like to thank Paul Sheedy, but he's not really here to thank him. But I thought he did a wonderful job while he was here. Yeah, but the April deadline, the April 2026 deadline, might feel a long way away. But I would say the window's closing fast. So please, look at what we said today. You will be getting a recording of this webinar. So if you can face listening to Suzanne and I again, please do, and pick out the relevant bits. If not, please just click on the link to set up a call, and myself or one of my colleagues will be on the call with you just to talk through ideas and thoughts and what we can do. And please keep looking at Portugal Pathways and keep looking at our webinars, because we are here to give you a soft landing in Portugal. But make sure that all I'd say is make sure that you don't waste a day. Make sure that it's something You know, you spent 50 minutes with us. Make sure it's something you take action on one way or the other. So thank you very, very much for your time, and hope to see you all soon.